Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to whoever is on the screen. And thank you for joining this webinar. And I'm going to talk about globalization trends, why Hong Kong would be the chosen place to be incorporated in Southeast Asia. First of all, I have to put in this standard disclaimer that these are all my personal opinion and has nothing to do with the Institute, and don't claim the Institute for any materials that are going to be provided herein. Now, the topic itself, I have to put some basics as a background. First of all, Southeast Asia will represent the ASEAN 10 countries mainly. So this is the map. I don't know how many places you have been there. And basically the background is they are very populated. However, the GDP per capita for 2019 is kind of low, except for Singapore and Brunei. And there are many ethnic groups within each country. So by the time when you go there, even if you may know Thai language, I am very doubtful that you can walk through Thailand throughout using one Thai language. Now, this is a standard definition for globalization. I would like to stress a few points. It is interaction and integration among people, companies, and governments worldwide. And it covers exchange of ideas, beliefs, and culture, covering goods, services, data, technology, economic resources, and capital. Now, I want you to have these backgrounds, though they are very simple, and you may have known it, but by the time when you settle in any place to start your business, you really have to consider what kind of services or goods are you planning to do in that particular place. And then you may have your own corporate values and beliefs, and how connectivity, your product can go into this particular countries. Now, quite often, when your own business is getting mature in your local market, there will be very limited opportunities left behind. So you are planning to do some expansion, or it can be the cost of your product is getting too expensive and leaving your very narrow profit margin. And that's, you may want to get some sourcing outside. Another thing is to promote your brand to the worldwide. Now, I'm not expecting any MNC corporate leader within our group. I'm expecting to have most of you will be in the SME category. Now, when you consider expansion, there are a lot of ideas you may have. However, you really have to think whether your chosen product is suitable and affordable in that particular area on your target country. And on top, because Southeast Asia is in, as the name say, is in Asia, the culture would be very different from that from the Western. And how adaptive a person can be in the place. It's not just crossing a different province, like in Canada, from BC to Alberta. because you will be seeing still a lot of Canadians. When you jump up to this part of the world, you will see all different countries, people from all different ASEAN countries. Now, for Canadian, it is a kind of good because we have the multiculturalism in Canada. So for your adaptability will be easier. And now comes to competition. Whether your service, your goods, or your technology, how competitive it is in our local place. Now, utility stabilities. If you are in the technology or your data business, utility stability is very important. You may enjoy such facility well in your local area. However, back to these ASEAN countries, loss of electricity or maybe other power may not be as stable as it is. Sourcing and exporting. Now, when it comes to sourcing and exporting, each country will have their own rules and your own corporate vision, whether to accept different kind of materials or the standard of your materials that can be input into your product. Availability, like different material and manpower. Material in a sense is that the sourcing of this material, like if you are in the fruit industry, there are lots and lots of good fruit in in Malaysia. But however, how well you can deliver all these goods to your own place, because fruit are easily damaged throughout the delivery channel. And say for manpower, whether your product or service requirements can be found in the local places. Like in general, you need to have really good English-speaking person to help you out, to run around in the local cities and to communicate with your counterparties. And restrictions, I'm referring to quite a few materials are kind of restricted to be exported. So these are the key rules that you really have to consider. Now, the last but not the least is the willingness to travel and explore opportunities. Like today, we have people from BC, so you are in the afternoon. We have people from Ontario, you are kind of in the evening. And in Hong Kong, we are now 5 a.m. in the morning. So we really have to do a lot of adjustment physically for doing business in this part of the world. Now, having said that, with those as a background, then I can tell you why Hong Kong should be the place to be incorporated. Here are a few points that I would like to let you know. And for some of you, you may have heard of it. If you have been in this part of the town in Hong Kong, like Catherine, she had been in Hong Kong for one time. And I will try to explain these several items for you. Logistics and infrastructures. Basically, with a 5-hour air travel, you can reach most of the countries. So logistics is very important. People and goods can be traveled easily. If your industry are involved with lots of traveling and cargo moving, so a 5-hour trip can reach you all the way to Singapore and all the way to Philippines and to Indonesia. And at the same time, if you move to the north, you can reach up to China, to Beijing, to Japan, and to Korea within 5 hours. Now, Hong Kong Airport is the aviation hub. It has connected to 220 destinations worldwide by 120 airlines. We have about 71 million passengers handled each year, and 4.8 million tons of cargo and airmail moved. And I would say Hong Kong is one of the busiest airports around the world. At the same time, we have high-speed train connected to the PRC. Now, why I have to mention to you, if you have been in Hong Kong, you will know that Hong Kong comprises of the Hong Kong Island, the Kowloon Peninsula, and the New Territories, whereby New Territories is connected with PRC. So we can travel to PRC by high-speed train, cross-border bus, and driving by ourselves. Now, the ASEAN countries, the 10 countries, annually has over 85 billion US dollar trading with the PRC. So they have very close business connection among this area. Hong Kong is also a major shipping port for flight and trading. And it has a very advanced local transportation system, like the widespread MTR. We can take an MTR from Hong Kong Island to Kowloon to New Territories, and it's a very simple and easy riding transportation that are mostly used by people in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is famous for the utility stability. And in particular, it has a widespread electric cables and satellite network in Hong Kong. And the low utility cost is another reason why people like to set up in Hong Kong. And right now, the data center, quite a few data centers are being built in Hong Kong. And of course, the internet. We have a very fast internet speed in Hong Kong. The cost of using a cell phone in Hong Kong is I would say, I would put it the word cheap, comparing to the Canadian charging rate. Now, the second important thing is about communication. We really need to communicate with people all over the world. And the official language here is Chinese and English. However, Cantonese is the main spoken dialect. If you know the Chinese language, there are quite a number of dialects in China itself. Even for myself, I've been back to Hong Kong for, I would say, over 30 years. I cannot speak another dialect because in Hong Kong, we only speak Cantonese. And in fact, in southern China, Guangzhou, people can speak both Mandarin and Cantonese. However, if you move further north, they have all kinds of different dialects. The same situation would be in for all other ASEAN countries, because there are different ethnic groups in each country, and they all speak different language. It's a good thing that in China we can have a Mandarin as a common, I would say, a common spoken language for China. However, in some villages in like Laos or in Thailand, they may really speak different kinds of dialect, and they may not even understand each other. And in most public facilities have bilingual system. So you won't miss anything. And in fact, you can ask for your way along with anybody. So they can show you the way, your way in Hong Kong. And if you have been in Hong Kong, you will know this is the situation. Another key thing is, in case you really cannot find anybody that can communicate with you, you can find a translator easily for all kinds of languages with no problem. Cultural diversity. We really welcome foreigners. Even in the building where I'm living, we have foreigners from overseas. And I'm used to seeing Japanese, Korean, Indians, Canadians living in the same building. And we often say hello to each other. And at the same time, I don't know whether you know that Canadian has the biggest Canadian community outside Canada would be in Hong Kong. We have about 300,000 Canadians living in Hong Kong, which is about 5% of our population, believe it or not. And discrimination will be really protected under by laws, such as the Discrimination Ordinance for Race, Sex, and Disability. And we have government bodies such as the Equal Opportunities Commission, in case something unfair being come up, and you can always go to them and ask for help. And of course, if you want to move to this part of the world, you may concern whether your children get the most adaptable living style. So there are lots of international schools in Hong Kong. We have one called Canadian International School, which curriculum will match the Ontario system. And lots of my friends' children went there, and then once graduated, they will move on to Toronto to study. Now, starting to come to money part, the tax treaty signed with other countries. For Hong Kong, is a very special jurisdiction. It's called Hong Kong SAR, Special Administration Region, and Hong Kong itself can sign directly double taxation agreements and arrangement with overseas countries. So we have signed such agreements with Canada and lots of other places. And you can refer to this link, and then you will see which countries that we have signed with. And then you can refer to the possible tax benefits that you can receive. And on top, we have trade agreements signed between Hong Kong, China, and the ASEAN that we refer to, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. These are the 10 countries of the ASEAN. Now, for Hong Kong, it runs a very simple tax system, what we call territorial system. So you only need to pay tax for money earned in Hong Kong, which will include salaries, rental income from properties, trading profits from businesses, and income from providing services. Now, we do not, there's no capital gain tax. There is no tax on dividend receipt. There is no tax on most interest from financial institutions. And there's no estate duty. Having said that, don't you think this is very attractive? Under item 5 to 8. I'm a chartered accountant and I know the tax system in Canada. And I can assure you that by the time you work in Hong Kong, you know this helps you a lot. Now, even for the maximum tax rate is only 16.5% for profits tax and 15% for salaries tax. And for the first 2 million Hong Kong dollar you earn, the tax will reduce by 50%. And you can refer to this link in view of time for the details. And before you use the standard rate to compute the individual tax, you will allow to have some deductions. Just like in Canada, you have sort of allowances. And after that, it will go for a progressive rate. And when the progressive rate reaches to a maximum of 15% for individuals, then everything will consider using 15% to compute your tax, regardless of this progressive rate. So you will be doing it at the lower of this progressive rate or a flat rate of 15%. However, when you are buying, selling property, this is the table for you to consider. And if you are buying or selling anything over 20 million Hong Kong dollar, this is the rate, which is sort of more than the Canadian. I don't think we have this kind of stamp duty for sale or transfer of immovable property. Now, there is a stamp duty on share transfer. Hong Kong has a very efficient stock exchange. I'm sure you have heard of that. And whichever there's a trade in stock value, there is a stamp duty charge on that. And the rate will be effective from August 2021. The rate will increase by 30%, whereby lots of traders are arguing why Hong Kong at this time need to increase such a transfer rate. And for every business running in Hong Kong, you must have to carry a business registration fee, though it's minimal. Now, this is the key point. There's no goods and service tax here. There's no import tax except for luxury items such as automobiles and tobacco. And there is no re-export tax. Basically, goods can be traveled through Hong Kong without any tax. And at the same time, here comes the good part of money. You can easily find all kinds of currency can be exchanged in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a center for clearing, a clearing center for Hong Kong dollar, for US dollar, and for renminbi. Therefore, we can easily write checks or get exchange of all these kind of currencies. Now, talking about doing business, that you would like to know how to get funding. There are lots of different fundraising activities in Hong Kong, from bank loans to IPO of shares. And there are lots of professionals who can help you out throughout this process. And there's no currency exchange control in Hong Kong. So basically, you can remit in, transfer out funds at any time you want without getting approval from the local government. Now, this is one of the key things why Hong Kong can sustain to be the three years country, three years adjudication jurisdiction in Hong Kong, in the world, because of this currency movement. And on top, we have the Trade Development Council, which carry each year international exhibitions and forums for different industry to be held in Hong Kong for promotion of their brand. Like every year, we have the jewelry exhibition, we have the book exhibition, and easily we have over 1,000 companies joining such kind of forums or exhibitions. And this is the most important part, is a good system of law to protect the individual properties and also the patents and intellectual properties. Now we have we use a common law system, which is common for most of the Commonwealth countries, and such as Canada. And we have the land title ordinance, we have the companies ordinance, which controls all these services. Now, I won't go into too details because I only have about 15 minutes left for my talk, so I have to really go quick. Now, we have ordinance for trademark, registered design, patents, and copyright. You can easily find lawyers in Hong Kong, and also in particular, Canadian lawyers are also easily be found. And we welcome foreign investments as a gateway from east to west and vice versa. There are over 120 embassies in Hong Kong. Over 160 banks have offices in Hong Kong. So all the bigger banks in Canada, like Bank of Montreal, Royal Bank of Canada, whatnot, they have offices in Hong Kong. And there are more than 40 Chamber of Commerce, of which Canadian Chamber of Commerce is one of those. And we have high standard of living. How should I put it? Is that it's easily adaptable, and the only thing I can comment is the housing rental or the housing prices is a bit higher. But if you are already in Vancouver or Toronto, you know what kind of standard is that. And we have the ICAC, Independent Commission Against Corruption, which provides a fair competition among all these enterprises. And we have the new anti-money laundering ordinance, which will help Hong Kong to become a more fair playing field for all types of local business. And now it's getting so tight. Each time when you want to open a bank account in Hong Kong, the directors have to be in Hong Kong to meet the banker before they can start helping you to open a bank account. And now, if you have the time, you can refer to lots of new opportunities in Hong Kong, like the SIPA is an agreement between Hong Kong and the PRC central government that they allow new business opportunities in China. So if you care to read all this, there are ample of such opportunities. And in the coming 5 years, they are going to develop what we call the Greater Bay Area, which consists of 9 mainland cities in Guangdong, plus Macau and Hong Kong. And such opportunities are so many, so I cannot tell you all this at one time. Now, other than that, we have all kinds of dedicated funds for branding, upgrading, and domestic sales that you can get it from the government. Once we have joined the a trip offered by the TDC, the Trade Development Council, to visit different countries, including ASEAN countries. And such trip are partly funded by such kind of export marketing fund. And Hong Kong is the ESG focus. Recently, in 2019, all the Hong Kong Exchange requires all the listed company to provide the ESG report, starting from financial year commencing on or after July 1st, 2020. So you can tell how Hong Kong is trying to meet the sustainability of its whole infrastructure for future. Now, for the details of how to incorporate in Hong Kong, I won't talk about that too much because these are very common sense. If you have the time, you can spend a few minutes to study them. The only special thing is what we call branches of overseas companies. If you do not want to operate a local companies, you can have a branch set up in Hong Kong from your head office in Canada. In fact, my office is the branch office for the Canadian Chartered Accountants. They have set up a branch in Hong Kong, and this is the route that they have chosen. However, for most business type corporation, most of them will choose to incorporate locally. Now, for requirements of incorporation, in Hong Kong, it is by law that only company registry licensed TCSP's company can provide such services, which stands for Trust and Corporation Services Providers, TCSP. So even for our company, International Secretaries Limited, we are also licensed to do such type of work. In general, in Hong Kong, you can set up a company by one person and being the single director and shareholder. However, each company must have a local company secretary to represent. And it has to be a Hong Kong resident or Hong Kong registered company. In that sense, our company, International Secretaries, is now carrying out such services. And the register office must be located in Hong Kong. You need not really need a physical office. You can use, say, our office as a register office to meet this requirement. And for transparency, right now we need a significant controller register for each company. And there is a special person who need to handle this. And this is also a part of our service. But if you have local staff, you can ask your staff to be the designated person, designated rep. That's what we call designated representative. And each limited company must be audited for each year as required by the company's registry. And this is quite different from Canada. Canada does not have that requirement. And for whoever that can do audits in Hong Kong, they are all licensed by the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants, of which CKL and Partners is also a licensed qualified auditors in Hong Kong. And this Hong Kong ICPA qualification received mutual recognition from all Commonwealth Chartered Accountants bodies, such as the Institute of Canadian Chartered Accountants. Now, I'm telling you all this is to show that Hong Kong is a well-organized platform for people doing business in Hong Kong. Now, for the details, I won't go deep into it. You can easily just type in Incorporation in Hong Kong, then you will see a clear definition for all the details from the company's registry. And I just list out these procedures for your easy reference. Now, for being a shareholder or a director, you can be anybody from overseas. And for directors' requirement, only one person has to be a natural person, and the other directors can be corporate directors. And there's a requirement to file an annual return. This is the responsibility of the designated rep. This is quite new. It was introduced about 2 to 3 years ago for the transparency of whoever is the real owner behind each limited corporation. And the designated rep has to be a resident in Hong Kong. And this is only open for inspection by 8 government bodies. So basically, the designated person would be responsible for helping these 8 different government bodies, including one of which is the Inland Revenue. Now, this is the tax treaty part with Canada. You can have a good look. And if you are doing business already in Hong Kong, you should have already known about this. The tax efficient planning for Canada, because of the higher tax rate, tax deferral is one of the way to be tax efficient. And on income splitting is another way. Now, the final, most people in Hong Kong, in particular for the Canadian communities, they claim themselves to be non-resident. Once they are non-resident, they will pay only Hong Kong tax, and they will not need to pay Canadian tax. But at the same time, of course, you cannot enjoy the Canadian benefits. Now, before you come here to start working, I would suggest you to talk to the local Canadian communities or any friends or companies that have experience in Hong Kong to avoid any cultural shock that you will engage. And we have lots of Canadian university alumni, one of which is the UBC, the school that I graduated from. And under the current COVID situation, we haven't had a case for 8 days, thank God. However, our restriction is still maintained. We don't want to get into trouble like Taiwan or India recently, and Vietnam, because of the different variant of COVID, and the number suddenly jump up so much. Now, Lan Platform is the place that if you are in Hong Kong, you must need to pay a visit. It's a tourist attraction built by a Canadian. It's about a few blocks in Central. And it has all these drinking, cupping, and dining area. And once you feel tired after work, or you feel not at home, this is the place where you should go. And finally, we have the famous pineapple bun without pineapple, the famous chicken tail bun without chicken tail, and what we call the pantyhose milk tea. Now, you need to have very good imagination to why you can enjoy such type of food. This is a very local tea restaurants in Hong Kong. And I suppose you may have tried this in your local place, Chinatown. And this ends up my talk. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.